Chapter 13. Martha nearly ricocheted off her locker as a hand came down on her arm. When she looked up, it was to find Greg Chambers looking down, a friendly but professional look on his face. "Little jumpy, aren't you? Late night?" Martha forced a grim smile and shrugged. She'd taken over Connor's room again last night, even though he boarded up the panel in her closet. But she hadn't slept, not with Connor's speculations pounding in her head and every nighttime noise of fatal danger. "Why don't you step into my office?" Greg said, amicably. Martha stalled. I have this history quiz. I'll write you a note." He took her arm and steered her down the hall, shutting his office door, indicating the chair with a nod of his head. "With your test grades lately, one more bad one shouldn't matter too much, should it?" He slid behind his desk with a sly grin and leaned towards her. "Come on now, Martha. I'm not the enemy here. So let's have it, huh?" Martha squirmed miserably in her seat and said, "Well, I've been kind of tired." "Tired?" He slapped his palm on a pile of papers, scattering them. "You look like a zombie. When was the last time you slept? Or ate, for that matter? If Blake's really serious about this, he better start taking better care of you." He chuckled as Martha blushed. "So are you going to tell me the problem, or do I have to use all the clever little ploys I learned about in advisor school?" "I'm just not adjusting very well, I guess." Greg nodded, fingers drumming on the desktop. "Your teachers are concerned." "No, now wait a minute. Concerned?" "Martha, not out to get you. The transcripts you brought with you show a whole different kind of student. So how come she stayed back in Chicago?" "She liked it there." "Ah, has she thought of coming for a little visit, impressing us with her exceptional abilities?" His smile was so like Blake's it was irresistible, and Martha felt herself returning it. "That's better. What's wrong, Martha?" Her smile melted, swallowed by a sick feeling inside. It's just the house." "The house?" "The house?" Greg looked down at her file, running his thumb along the tab. "This, wouldn't have anything to do with its history, would it?" Martha shrugged non-comedically. The last thing in the world she wanted to talk about now was the house and all the terrors that opened up. She kept her eyes on his hands, lean and strong like Blake's. "Okay, now, look." Greg sighed and felt back in his chair, swiveling a little as he snapped a rubber band. "Every town has its spooky old house and its eccentric old neighbors and its ridiculous old fairy tales. Bedford's no exception. It's no fairy tale. It really happened. Somebody was murdered." "Okay, somebody was murdered and the murderer drowned? End of case. Every old house as the world probably has a death or two to its credit, natural or unnatural, as the case may be. So what's really bothering you? It can't just be a haunted house, gossip." Martha didn't want to go into it. Here, in the warm confines of Greg's office, all the terrors seemed oddly out of perspective and very far away. "Want to talk about Connor?" Greg said suddenly. "Not really. He's quite the thing around here, or so all the girls tell me." "I wouldn't know," Martha said, and again had trouble reconciling her own impression of Connor with the female population of Bedford High. "You two get along okay?" Martha shrugged again. "I guess so. We actually talked for the first time last night. Does that count?" "How about your dad? Your new stepmom? They're in Hawaii. I haven't heard from them. Bet you miss them." Martha shook her head. "I wouldn't give them the satisfaction." "You're not helping me out here, Martha," Greg said quietly, and Martha regarded him, almost pleading. "What do you want me to say? I'm just not catching on, that's all. I don't fit in." "Have you tried?" "The kids don't want to have anything to do with me. Haven't you heard? I live in Elizabeth Bedford's house." "Martha, it's just a house. I can't believe you're..." "Just a house?" Martha gave a twisted smile. "Right, where fires start and doors open and rooms never get warm." "Wait," Greg put up his hands, but his laugh was strained. "What's all this about? Fires and doors and..." "It's true," Martha said. "There's even a secret passageway behind my closet. Connor says there could be lots more we'll never even know about." "That's probably somewhat true," Greg admitted. His glance was almost apologetic. "Martha, the house is over a century old. Years ago, it was used to hide runaway slaves. Elizabeth's father told me himself the place was supposed to be full of tunnels and secret rooms he'd heard about since he was a kid. There were even supposed to be ways to get from the house to the old cemetery out back. but the stories were probably exaggerated by the time they got to this generation. There probably weren't as many hiding places as there were rumors. Martha wished she could feel as unconcerned about them as Greg seemed to feel. And someone's been trying to scare me on the phone, calling me Elizabeth? She trailed off as Greg got up from his chair and stood at the window, running his fingers absently over his chin. It was several minutes before he spoke again. His voice sounded odd. People do weird things around Halloween. Your folks know how you feel about the house? They don't care how I feel about anything. Aloud, Martha said, they love it there. I mean, they see all this great potential. I guess I'm just unimaginative. She almost laughed at that. Okay, so maybe you shouldn't be in the house then. Maybe at least for a while. You should stay with friends or something. I mean, there's nothing I'd like better to do than to never see that place again. But what can I do? Dad sure isn't going to buy me a house of my own because this one makes me crazy. Greg's shoulders straightened. He drew a deep breath and turned to face her, relaxed and conversational once more. Martha, I'm sorry this house has become such a big issue with you. I wish you'd never heard any of the rumors at all. I mean, all these coincidences are unfortunate, but you shouldn't take them so seriously. It's really affecting other areas of your life. You obviously don't feel well, and your Greg's belong on somebody else's report card. He trailed one finger along the windowsill and wiped the dust carefully on his sleeve. I'll be glad to talk to your dad about this when he... Don't even bother, Martha sighed. He wouldn't take you seriously anyway. She propped her chin in her hands, her face gloomy. He doesn't understand why I don't like it. He probably wouldn't even understand why Wynn doesn't like it. Then catching herself, she dropped her eyes. Sorry, I should have said that. Greg smiled sympathetically. You've been good for Wynn, Martha. It's nice to see her smile for a change. And then his own smile faded, tightened into a questioning look. I don't suppose. She's talked to you about what happened that night. Martha shook her head. She told me she can't remember things. That's all. Greg sighed, gave a vague nod. Well, what else can we do, huh? Other than that long dark she keeps dreaming about, I guess she won't remember anything else till she's ready. Martha looked thoughtful. And you don't have an idea of what that means? The long dark? No, he offered a sad smile, shrugged his shoulders. It was storming that night, and the house was so dark. I guess that's what keeps coming back to her. Her long walk up the stairs to Elizabeth's when she saw her. It's hard to say. In her state of panic, a second could have seemed like an eternity. Martha couldn't hold it anymore. Do you think Dennis drowned? She blurted out. Of course, he said, and his eyes were calm and full upon her face. Of course he drowned. They found some of his clothes miles downriver from here. Nobody's ever doubted that. Blake does. I do. Martha, I hate to see you borrowing trouble. You have enough to cope with right now. You don't need to invent new things. His smile was back again, warm, sympathetic, understanding. He stopped beside her and laid a hand on her shoulder. You can talk to me anytime you want, every day if you like. That's what I'm here for. Martha nodded mechanically. If she stayed a second longer, she feared she'd burst into tears and never be able to face him again. Greg scrawled something on a piece of paper, folded it, and handed it over. I don't want to see you unhappy, he said. Things don't have to stay this way. If you'd get your act together, that's what you really mean. Martha closed the door behind her and headed slowly for class. She felt bruised, as if the weight of the world had finally come crashing down, and she felt humiliated. Never in all her years of school had a teacher had to talk to her about grades. Wynn was waiting by her locker at the end of the day, and Martha gave her a rueful smile. Congratulate me. I just wrote another paper on the wrong book. Oh, Martha, no. Wynn looked properly devastated. And Martha squeezed her arm. And I got lectured by Mr. Chambers. It's been a full day. I'm sorry, Martha, and after all the reading you did, too. Martha nodded tiredly. If I don't get a decent grade in history next week, I might as well kill myself. If I don't, Dad will when he gets home. I could help you, Wynn said quietly, with that report. Martha turned and stared. You're sweet, but you can't give the speech for me. No, but I can help you write it, because I've already read the book for another class. And maybe, she hesitated, almost embarrassed, I could come to your house, and we could start studying together. As Martha stared at her, Wynn's cheeks grew pink. If that's okay. Wynn, are you sure? I mean, really? You know I'd love you to come, but if you feel at all funny about it, I'd understand perfectly. No, Wynn shook her head empathetically. I want to. It's time, and I want to. Martha nodded slowly, a mischievous smile going across her face. I'll make sure Connor's home when you come. This time, Wynn's cheeks went crimson. Oh, Martha, you wouldn't. Please don't say anything. Relax. He's weird, but I don't think he bites. I won't say anything, but I still don't see what you see in him. Now it was Wynn who looked surprised. Why, Martha? He's so tall and rugged and mysterious. He's not rugged. He's too thin to be rugged. He's rugged, Wynn insisted, lean and strong. How would you know? Martha couldn't help teasing. He looks strong. His shoulders look strong. I'll bet Blake is stronger. I'll bet he's not. All the girls say how sexy Connor is. How would they know? Well, look at Blake. He's too, well, friendly to be sexy. No mystery there. Connor's the strong, silent type. He's not always silent. Actually, sometimes he's pretty funny in a sarcastic kind of way. Do you think Blake's sexy? I bet he kisses better than Connor. I bet he doesn't. They collapsed in helpless giggles, and for a while neither of them could speak. Finally, Wynn caught her breath and sagged back against Martha's locker. Oh, I hurt. I feel like some hot chocolate. You don't have to go home right now, do you? Well, Martha broke off and grinned. Connor was coming towards them down the hall, seeming obvious to the female stares that followed him. Well, speak of the devil. She tried to compose herself as he stopped right beside a flustered Wynn. I was just coming to find you, she said casually. You remember Wynn, don't you? The picture hook, sure. Connor looked down, his face suggesting a smile. Hi, Wynn, how are you? Wynn seemed to be having trouble catching her breath, but managed a quiet hi in return. Martha rushed to fill the silence. Wynn and I have some things to do. Could you pick me up later? He doesn't have to do that, Wynn said. One of us can give you a ride home. I've got to go to the library anyway, Connor said. Where do you want me to meet you? Here's okay, I guess. In the lot, then. You have a watch. She held up her arm. Five or so. He nodded, started to turn away, and then caught himself absent-mindedly. You should come out to the house sometime, Wynn. Nice seeing you again. You too. Wynn looked slightly breathless, and Martha didn't know whether to laugh or be sick. What is it about him? She muttered, and as Wynn looked meaningfully at her, they both burst out laughing again. I guess I just don't see it. It's hard, Wynn sighed, when the boys in your family are more popular than you are. But you must see something in Blake. What is all the fuss about? Wynn made a face. Handsome, athletic, charming, the celebrity of the school, the town, and he's so nice too, except to me. Crazy about him, and you know it. But he must have a flaw. Only one, she nodded. He likes to win. Now come on. She hooked her arm through Martha's, and they headed out into the dismal weather. Let's get that hot chocolate, and you can tell me more about Connor. The steamy warmth of the coffee shop felt good. After they ordered hot drinks and settled back in their booth, Wynn leaned across the table conspiratorially. I hear you're going to the Halloween dance Sunday with Blake. How did you know that? He told me. I think it's nice, too. Maybe we could go together, Martha suggested, and was surprised when Wynn shook her head. I don't have a date, but thanks. Oh, Wynn, since you're on the decorating committee, I just assumed. It's okay, really. I'm supposed to be in charge of the refreshments, so I wouldn't have time to dance. Anyway, it's good that I'm going. I need to do that. She tried to smile, but her mouth looked oddly frozen. We all need to. Wynn, Martha said hesitantly, Blake told me about what happened last year, about you finding Elizabeth and, well, he didn't want me to talk to you about it with you, but I thought you should know that I know. He's always worrying about me, Wynn said sadly, but if he really cared, he wouldn't keep saying that Dennis killed her, because I know he didn't. I think, Martha said carefully, that you're the only one who feels that way. I know, but it's true. But what about all the threats he made? Martha persisted, not unkindly. The phone calls, Anne? The phone calls she got. The person always disguised his voice. And all the times she thought he was following her, she couldn't see him clearly. She could ever be sure it was Dennis. Wynn blinked back sudden tears. Martha, I told you he loved Elizabeth. He wanted her back, not to kill her. Oh, damn, I wish I could remember that night. She bounced back angrily against the seat, and Martha reached out for her hand. What do you remember about that night? Wynn's eyes gazed desperately at the ceiling, then lowered back to Martha's face. They were narrowed now, almost painful in their concentration. I know I found Elizabeth in her room and all the blood. I remember. She caught her breath and then forced herself on. I remember Blake and Greg running up the stairs shouting. And what? Martha asked gently. Wynn's stare grew round and solemn. The dark, she said flatly.